Hello, everybody. I propose to start for the people who came on time. So thank you, all of you, for attending to the last Lunch and Learn of this year. I'm so grateful and pleased to welcome today our guest speaker, Camille Settel and Sini Escola. But let's go directly to the other point. So just for some practical information, this Lunch and Learn will be is registered. That means you will be all on this registration and you will find this record on our YouTube page later. All the question and answer, I will ask you to ask your question in the chat. You can ask a question directly when you have a question, and I will take them or during the presentation or at the end of the two presentation. Other point, this material, slide deck, and so on will be also on our website. Can I ask you to mute yourself and to raise your hand if you want to talk? But now you know already all these rules since long. So at the agenda today, my welcome, APL in a nutshell. Then I will let the floor to Sini Escola from FPA about European pharmaceutical strategy and the outlook on 2022. Maître Camille Settel will do the same exercise for Luxembourg. Then we will have a Q&A, and after that I will finish by the introduction of the legal task force that APL will set up on 2022. So once again, welcome, and I start with the content. So for one who know a bit less APL, our motion is to promote best healthcare in encouraging therapeutic innovation in the field of medicine for human use in Luxembourg. That all these words are important. We are here for the patient to promote innovative therapeutic innovation for the patient in Luxembourg. We are now 57 members and 19 of them are working in different task forces that represent around 30 experts helping APL to reach the goal of innovative medicines in Luxembourg. But today we are more here to talk about the legal review, and for that we have the pleasure to welcome Maître Camille Settel. You already know her very well. She's partner at Teves and Reuter law firm, a very important company in Luxembourg. She has a specialization about IP, healthcare, and life science. She's also author of a book about Luxembourgish drug law regulation, published beginning of this year, in last year. You can find other video of Camille on our YouTube channel. Thank you, Camille, for being here once again and giving your time and expertise. Our second guest today is Sini Escola. Sini Escola is Director, Team Leader, Regulatory Drug Development and Manufacturing at FPA. She has this role since 2014, and before that she was Global Regulatory Affair Manager in the industry. She started her career as the Executive Director of the Finnish Pharmacist Society. So you have guessed that she's pharmacist by learning from Helsinki University, and you know also maybe she's a PhD candidate from Utrecht University starting in 2019, and her work is about real-world evidence. Thank you very much, Sini, for being here as well. So I will start directly with the presentation of Sini Escola about EU Pharmaceutical Strategy 2021 and Outlook 2022. Thank you, Sini. Floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Moyen, bonjour to all APL members, and it is truly a pleasure to join your Lunch and Learn. And today, the topic that both Camille and myself are going to look at is about the current legislative initiatives ongoing. And I will walk you through of a very important initiative happening on the European level, talk about a bit more on EU pharmaceutical strategy and what that entails. In the next slide, thank you, Sonia, a few words about the organization that I represent. So I work for European Federation of Pharmaceutical Industries and Associations, EFPIA, and it is an equivalent to the APL on the Luxembourg side, but we work then on a more umbrella organization representing all pharmaceutical industries who innovate, do R&D or manufacturing in Europe. And currently we have 36 national associations and almost 40 leading pharmaceutical innovative companies as part of our membership. And our mission, like APL's, is to create a collaborative environment that enables our member companies to innovate, discover, and develop new innovative therapies and vaccines across Europe to people. So that's a few words about EFPIA, and today's objectives would be to truly appreciate the complexity of the EU pharmaceutical legislation. We often refer that to a term acquis, so it means rights and obligations that are binding all the parties involved. So a few words about that just to put things into the context. And then further words about aims of what the EU pharmaceutical strategy entails and what are its potential implications. And also, obviously, representing the innovative industry in Europe, I will also outline some of the perspectives of what we believe is an opportunity or potential risks that the new strategy and legislative changes will bring to us. So in the next slide, you will see the framework of the EU Pharma Acquis. So the legislative framework that all the medicine developers as well as regulators need to navigate through to bring an innovative or any medicine to patients' use in Europe. And the core is that one that you see in the middle. So the Directive for Medicinal Products that was established 2001 entails all the national authorization procedures, rules for supervision, rules for manufacturing, distribution, and advertisement. So truly the core pharmaceutical legislation for us to operate in. But that directive has been since then undergone actually 12 regular changes to keep it up to date. So you will see that another very important piece of regulation came into play 2004 that laid down the rules for authorization in a centralized procedure, as well as later on pharmacovigilance relating to all patient safety aspects came on board, and after that the falsified medicines directive. And on the left side, you will see then other pieces of regulations that actually give the guidance on how to bring pediatric medicines, orphan medicines, or advanced therapeutic medicinal products to the market. And on the right side, you will see the bunch of the latest regulations that have been established, not all yet. So you will see there on the top the clinical trials regulation expected to come now finally into application in January next year. Medical devices regulation that is already applicable, and we're pending application of the in vitro diagnostic medical devices. So I hope that the first objective to appreciate the jungle of the EU pharma regulation comes apparent here while looking at so many pieces of different regulations that give us the direction on how to bring the medicine to the patient in Europe. But then to the next topic, which is the key and core for today's talk, is what is that EU pharmaceutical strategy then all about? The new commission that took a mandate a few years back launched it in 2020 with truly an objective to take the learnings from COVID-19 pandemic, how to make the system more crisis resistant. Second objective is to ensure the accessibility and affordability of medicines in Europe. Third one, to support sustainable innovation and take into account the emerging science and digitalization. And the fourth and last one, to reduce medicines shortages and securing strategic autonomy. These are the core pillars of all the suggestions that are put forward. And you see there are a few quotes from the Stella Kyriakides, who is the EU Commissioner for Health, outlining in all her public speeches kind of the two ambitions that this strategy tries to truly address. And that is to actually somehow make sure that all the citizens across Europe have access to medicines, but also at the same time, and sometimes it is two sides of the same coin, how can we still put efforts in supporting the innovation, research and development, and address the unmet medical needs that we still have. So what's then the innovative industry's perspective on the EU pharmaceutical strategy? It is actually once in a lifetime, or maybe 2 times in a lifetime, depending on your age, opportunity to truly look at how the medicines are managed in Europe. It, of course, has greater opportunities to truly trying to shape the future-proof world-class regulatory framework and put the EU on par with the other regions. It's a fierce competition, and there are elements that EU is currently lagging behind, but actually through this comprehensive strategy, there is a chance to really promote EU as a place for innovation in the future. We also see as an opportunity to preserve our strong and predictable IP incentive system, which would include then some specific medicinal products, such as the rare medicines for rare diseases, for children, pediatrics, or other unmet medical needs. And as you said, the Commissioner outlines the opportunity to address the access issue. So we also see that as an opportunity to engage proactively in different solutions, particularly on the national level, how we can address the better access for medicines and see how the R&D cost transparency requirements can be handled in a meaningful way. Also, we should look at how to ensure that we have a secure supply system continuously here in Europe, but also make sure that these stricter obligations that we foresee are coming are proportionate and fit for purpose to the future. What we see as risks are reduction of incentives. There are clearly some signs and the greater pressures to look at the kind of the underlying incentive for all medicines that exist today, the RDP, and also different market protection incentives. We see there is a tendency and a risk to introduce quite strict conditionality of incentives that could be dependent upon transparency of the costs or public funding, somehow tied into the compulsory market launches, or somehow conditional to addressing the unmet medical needs. We also see risks for further applications to force transparency of the costs and market launch, and stricter applications to supply rules and withdrawals. None of these are bad ideas, but applied in an inappropriate or unproportionate way can really hinder the innovation, which would then be counterproductive of the objectives of the strategy itself. So we need to keep an eye on this. In the next few slides, if we move forward, I'm going to walk you quickly through some of the key elements and the proposals that the European innovative pharma industry is much promoting through different consultations that we foresee in the upcoming years and already this year. So in the next slide, you will see the summary of something that I particularly work very closely with. It is based on many years of strategic work, evidence gathering, consultation throughout our vast membership. And we call it regulatory road to innovation, just to tie it up on the kind of an umbrella term on what can we promote in order to have an agile, competitive, world-class regulatory system in Europe. And there are certain areas and topics that we should definitely act upon now. And these can be already achieved in the current legislative framework to a greater extent. Of course, when there will be evaluation and revision of the directive and the regulation, we have an opportunity to also introduce some legislative changes. But just to mention a few important areas where work needs to happen already now, and thankfully is happening already, is promoting the use and acceptance of real-world data and evidence, really looking into how the different trial designs can be applied in a more meaningful way, shortening often the very long clinical research time for medicines. We should be looking at dynamic regulatory assessment, meaning that we have an iterative approach on the way how data is generated and assessed throughout the medicine development cycle. There are certain product types, such as the drug-device combinations that are in increase. We see that the pipeline currently has 25% of these types of drug-device combinations, and we will need to address this by finding a more streamlined way how the assessment actually takes place. As the Commissioner and the EU Pharma Strategy highlights in multiple places, the unmet medical needs need to be better addressed. And of course, one thinks about how can we address certain orphan rare diseases in a better way? How can we promote innovation, for instance, in AMR space, which is a huge unmet medical need for new antibiotics? So a lot of things can be strengthened there. Digitalization across product life cycle, manufacturing chain, and availability of medicines are areas to truly address already now, as well as revision of the variation regulation, which actually directs the way how changes can be made after the marketing authorization has been granted. And on the right side, just very briefly, you can see the 4 priority areas where FPR truly sees a need for a legislative change, and that is enabling swifter and expertise-driven decision-making, meaning that certain structures of the EU regulatory network and the way authorities are currently structured could be better streamlined and assessed again. We should really look at optimal use of expedited pathways, and about the combination products, we believe that EMA should have increased accountability in their assessment to create truly that streamlined way to evaluate these types of products. One of the key areas what we see for the future and truly benefiting the patient safety and patient themselves is to provide the product information about the medicine in an electronic mean. So how can we create a system that slowly, stepwise phases out the paper, also having a positive environmental impact at the same time. In the next slide, these are some of the ideas that we have on how we can ensure that we continue to have stable and predictable IP incentive system in Europe. And obviously, it would require that we have broad understanding of the unmet medical need that takes into account patient perspective, that actually counterbalances the one of the risks that we see that somehow the unmet medical need is too restrictive and becomes a condition to actually get an incentive in the future for your medical innovation. Some other ideas are how can we apply transferable exclusivity extension, particularly for the AMR field of research, how to ensure effective off-patent competition, and how can we take an approach to tackle the rare diseases in a better way. So there are some ideas how that could be handled. In the next slide, we have a few ideas then on often somehow sensitive issue about access. And before I even go into those solutions, it needs to be reinforced that access is obviously something that is governed nationally. So while the regulatory authorization is granted on the European level, the access issues are dealt by the national authorities. So pricing and reimbursement decision, well, and before that, even the health technology assessment take place on the national level. So all of these proposals should also be tackled on the national level. And that is not always seem to be understood in different discussions, and there are pressures on somehow bringing ideas on how we can do it on the European level. We're open for discussion, obviously, and really looking into how we can co-create these solutions in partnership with broader healthcare community, particularly including the member states into that dialogue. Innovative industry has been talking for years about value-based pricing. So you pay for what you get, the value that you can have, and obviously the health economy is also increasingly developed and used in order to better assess the value of the medicines. Also, securing supply chains is an important factor, as well as the harmonized way how we look at the shortages. So there are certain things that we believe should help to advance in this area, such as, well, agreeing what actually shortage constitutes of and what are the different root causes that create a shortage in the first place. That is the only way how we can really, in a structured way, address the solutions to the quite multifaceted problem. And of course, more transparency on supply chains is something that we hear from the stakeholders. And for instance, using the European Medicines Verification System, which is there to address the falsified medicines in the supply chain, is something that could be utilized in a much better way. So that was shortly about our key priority proposals in order to equip the pharmaceutical strategy to truly take into account the innovative industry point of view as well. And what does the future then hold for us? For the next few years, not only next year, but the next 5 years, we anticipate an intensive policy legislation discussion throughout Europe. It does not only happen in Brussels, where I'm located. It will happen in each of the member states of the European Union, and requires the stakeholders to take part in that dialogue to truly then come down to the legislation, the revised regulation of medicinal products in Europe that supports the innovation, but also, on the other hand, can address our unmet medical needs, find a way how we can ensure equal access for citizens throughout Europe. And we will see that the review of the Pharmaceutical Directive from 2001 and EMA Regulation 2004 are kind of the core pieces that are going to be revised, in combination of the revision that currently is taking place for orphan drugs and pediatric regulation. So this will keep us very busy, and it calls for every stakeholder to take part in finding solutions in a good way to this regulation. So I will end there, and let's see, Sonia, if there are any immediate questions.
So we don't have any immediate question in the chat. What I suggest then, because it's really huge change for our sector in European level, I propose to talk later about the consequence on Luxembourg of all this new regulation, and I propose then to let the floor to Camille. She will explain what happened last year in Luxembourg and what will be the next change we can expect from Luxembourg as well. So thank you very much, Sini. It was so very clear. And welcome, Camille.
So hello, everybody, and thank you, Sini, for this very interesting presentation. from the European level, and I will talk about Luxembourg level. But first of all, I will, as a transition, I will have a few words on some of the European law having impact on Luxembourg law. And Sini already said a few words on two major pieces of the jungle, of the legislative jungle, which are the regulation on clinical trials and medical devices. So I will say a few words on that. And after that, I will focus on Luxembourg law because, as Sini said, many issues are dealt with at the member states level, and so I will say a few words on the creation of the national agency, which is one of the main reforms that is highly welcomed and awaited by the industry in Luxembourg. And I will finish with detailing the draft bill 7383, which is currently under examination at the Chamber of Deputies, and which contains a lot of major reforms of the Luxembourg pharmaceutical law. So let's start with my first part, which is from European law to Luxembourg law. So first of all, the question of clinical trials. So I already had the opportunity to develop this subject with APL a few weeks ago. So I will not go into the detail of the regulation again. But as you know, this regulation, which bring major changes in the procedure, will apply at the end of January 2022. There will be a transition period during which it will be possible to remain under the procedure of the current directive. However, when this regulation will fully apply, then the application for authorization will need to be filed through a unique platform in Europe, and this will be the only possibility to file a request for authorization. So this is the main change that this regulation will bring. So so Sonia, just a few words. Yeah. So as you know, a regulation is directly applicable in the member states, and there is no need to be transposed into national law. However, we expect a law in that field because some topics are subject to a member state implementation, like the way the controls are performed, or for example, the sanctions, etc. So we expect a law in that field in the coming months or year. We'll see. So second topic is medical devices. So there is two regulations with different dates of application. Again, it is regulation, European regulation with direct application in the member states. So there is no need to be transposed into national law. However, certain topics like distribution, advertising, language requirement, etc., will need to be dealt at member state level. So we also expect a deep reform of our law on medical device in the coming weeks, months or year. So this was for the major reform of European law having impact on Luxembourg law. And then if we focus on what's happening in Luxembourg and on Luxembourg pharmaceutical law, so first of all, it's very important to have a few words on the creation of the national agency. So this agency will be created by law, and the draft bill has already been submitted to the Chamber of Deputies in February 2020. this project, this draft, has already been commented by the Medical College, the Chamber of Civil Servants, the Chamber of Commerce. And then, as you know, 2020 was a very difficult year for the health sector, and also 2021. And this is why today, end of 2021, this law has not been adopted yet. And we are still waiting for the advice of the Council of State, which is mandatory for the adoption of the law. And we can also expect new amendments to be adopted regarding this agency. So this was for the chronology of the adoption of this law. And in order to briefly describe this agency, because it's still an ongoing process, we cannot be sure about the final version of this agency, the physiognomy of this agency. But according to the current version of the draft bill, the name of this agency should be Agence luxembourgeoise des médicaments et des produits de santé. It should be set up under the form of a public independent body, which is an établissement public, and with private employees. And that point has been contested by the Chamber of Civil Servants in his comments. The Chamber of Civil Servants would like this agency to remain under the form of an administration with civil servants. So the government will have to take position on that issue in the amended version of the law. Regarding the scope of jurisdiction of this agency, it should be competent for a wide range of products. First of all, obviously, medicinal products for human use, but also veterinary medicinal products, experimental drugs, medical devices, cosmetic products, cell and tissues, food supplements, and other health products. Regarding the question of cosmetic products, it's interesting to know that the Medical College also raised kind of a position saying that these products are very different from pharmaceutical products and should not fall within the competence of the agency. So this will also has to be discussed, and the government will have to take position in the future version of the law. Regarding the missions of this agency, it should give a technical expertise on pharmaceutical issues. It should support innovation in the biomedical and health technology sectors, give advice to economic operators on regulatory matters. This agency will be in charge of the evaluation of manufacturing, distribution, international, non-international studies, advertising, post-marketing surveillance of all the products that fall within his competence. And all that missions will be performed in cooperation with the Direction of Health. As you know, to date, all these competence are in the hands of the Ministry of Health, which give authorizations on manufacturing, commercialization, marketing authorization. And so the draft law set up a cooperation based on the expertise of the agency, which will issue technical advices, and also the pharmacist inspector of the Direction of Health may request assistance of the experts of the agency. So basically, how is it drawn today? The Ministry of Health is a kind of administrative body which issues authorization, which performs controls with the power of police, which remains in the hands of the Ministry of Health, and it will work with the support of assistance of the agency. And on the other hand, today at least, the agency is the kind of scientific body, expert body, which is composed of a lot of experts, and she will perform inspections with the consent of the economic operators, because the two limits today of this agency is that this agency has not police and enforcement powers and no authority to take decisions, because all these powers remains in the end of the Ministry of Health. So this is the background today, and it will be very interesting to see regarding the different comments already issued by the chambers, what would be the position of the government regarding the agency. So this needs to be followed with great attention. And regarding the draft bill 7383, so as you know, because I already had the opportunity to organize a training on that draft bill, which is very complex. This draft bill brings major reforms in a very wide range of matters: manufacturing, importation, distribution to the public, market access, medical devices, also the profession of pharmacists, and wholesale distribution. So it's a very, very important law, draft law today. Regarding the chronology of the adoption of this act, it has been submitted to the Chamber of Deputies in November 2018. Then 1 year later, important amendments had been proposed by the government. And then after that, the adoption has been compromised by this virus, COVID-19, COVID-18, that today is still a great occupation for the government. So, and this is why all that important law are delayed today. But in July 2020, the government adopted an important law regarding COVID, has been adopted in July 2020, containing all the sanitary measures to react, to fight this crisis. And this COVID law, which is still in force today with a lot of modification until today, but which is still in force today, contains provisions on the storage of medicinal products, as well as provision allowing the Ministry of Health to allow the prescription of medicinal product without marketing authorization in order to answer to international crisis. So these two provisions that were contained in the initial draft bill are already adopted. So de facto, there are no more in this draft bill. And very recently, at the beginning of this month, a new draft bill regarding this sanitary crisis has been adopted, submitted to the Chamber of Deputies. And we, all of us have heard about this draft bill because it strengthens very strongly the sanitary measures, and it also contains provisions on market access and distribution of medicinal products. But I need to draw your attention to the fact that this morning has been published a new version of this draft bill, and all the provisions on market access, which I know that are very awaited by the industry, has been removed from this draft bill. So they are no more on the table today. But I will say a few words about that later. So at least yesterday should be adopted shortly. In 2022, it's a mistake from my part, it's adopted shortly, I guess in 2021, sorry, it's correct, should be adopted provisions on market access. But until today, it's no more possible because all this provision has been removed. And then all these provisions regarding market access should be adopted with the final version of the draft bill 7383. This means with all the other provision regarding importation, distribution to the public, and etc. So that's for the chronology and the forecast. But regarding so the upcoming reforms, so we still have on the table reforms on market access, distribution of medicinal products, and importation of medicinal products. So regarding market access, as you know, there is two major issues, which is off-label use of medicinal products and compassionate use of medicinal products. So regarding off-label use, so all my slides are based on the draft bill that has been removed this morning. So it's no more accurate, but however, I will still have a few words on that, because if it's no more accurate today, it shows the direction of the government in these topics, because as you know, market access has been in the initial version of the draft bill, then in the amended version of the draft bill, and we know that it's a provision that needs to be adapted, but this was the position of the government a few days ago, and this is probably the direction that will be adopted in the coming months. So off-label use, as you know, it's the use of a medicinal product which is covered by a marketing authorization, but whose use does not correspond to the therapeutical indications of the marketing authorization. So Sonia, you can go forward with the slides. So the proposition that was contained in the draft bill before it was removed is that the Ministry of Health formally authorize occasional and individual nominative prescription of a medicinal product off-label. This was subject to 4 conditions that I detailed below, but so of course the consent of the patient and also the obligation for the physician to get an insurance covering damage occurring for the patient. So real focus on the patient's condition and rights and good condition. Yes, Sonia, next slide, please. And so this authorization was subject to a formal request sent to the Ministry of Health. So the difference with the previous version that shows us the evolution of the reflection of the government and the stakeholders is that the previous version of the off-label use was way more complicated, in my opinion. And this is a simplification of the off-label framework, which is easier to understand. And so I guess this is to facilitate the prescription of off-label use, which is a good point. So another important difference is that there is a need of a formal decision of the ministry. So it's a case-by-case decision, probably with the application of the ordinary administrative proceeding regarding any appeal against this decision. And this new framework, and let's see if it's maintained or not, does not contain any provision anymore on the delivery of medicinal product of labels, which is also a simplification, because if you remember, the previous version contained very burdensome administrative obligations for the prescriptor to say in the order that it was off-label use, and then the pharmacist has to register the off-label use, etc. And all of that has been removed for now from that framework. So I guess it's also to facilitate the prescription of off-label use. Regarding compassionate use, which is also very important for the industry and the patients, there is two different legal framework. One is for occasional and individual prescription, and the second one is for a cohort of patients. So it's a compassionate program. So yeah, again, in the current version of the draft bill, which has been removed this morning, but what we can see is that there is also a need of a formal authorization for the Ministry of Health, that this concerns medicinal products which has no marketing authorization at all, and for which ongoing clinical trials are ongoing, or for which there is a pending marketing authorization application. Also, yes, Sonia, you can go forward with the slides, please. Also, the conditions to meet in order to prescribe a marketing product without marketing authorization, medicinal product without marketing authorization, is only in the case of a very disabling, chronic or severe disease, or an illness considered to be life-threatening. So it's only in the case of imminent risk for the patient. And there was in the law a focus on the consent of the patient, very important. Also the responsibility of the physician and the obligation to subscribe an insurance. The differences with the previous version, which shows the evolution of the reflection, it's also a simplification. This version does not contain the dual regime between special needs and imminent risk. So for now, prescribing medicinal product for a compassionate use for one patient is only in the case of imminent risk. And there were no more provision on delivery. And I guess we'll have to see the future version of the law. But regarding the compassionate program, also there is a need of formal authorization for the ministry with the advice of the National Research Ethics Committee. And this, at least the law, the draft bill, in its very last version, removed today, but this very last version fully referred to the European provisions contained in the regulation 726/2004, even for the definition of the compassionate program, which is the one contained in the European regulation. And we arrive at the point that justified the removal of these provisions in the draft bill, is that the framework which was contained in this draft bill, it was not very clear in which case the prescription should go through the compassionate use for one patient and the compassionate use for a cohort of patients. The framework were very similar, and the difference were not very clear. And the Council of States, which issued its advice on this draft bill, raised a formal opposition. And since the circumstances today are very critical, and that the draft bill needs to be adopted in a very, very short time, I think that the government decided to remove the question regarding market access, which was not clearly related to the COVID crisis, and then in order to build a better framework in the next version of the draft bill. So this we can also skip this provision, which is no more accurate today. And then I arrived to the question of the distribution of medicinal products. So very shortly, because unless I'm mistaken, but I think it's still in the draft bill, in the COVID draft bill, that it's about to be adopted in the coming hours. This draft bill contains a provision allowing wholesalers to supply medicinal products to the physician, dentist, and veterinary. And the list of the concerned medicinal products has to be determined by a ground-legal regulation. And this provision aims to allow the supply of vaccines directly to the physician office. So this provision is clearly directly related to the measures to fight the COVID, the sanitary crisis. So this should be adopted very shortly. And as a midterm objective, so in the draft bill 7383, so there is a modification of the article of the law regarding the distribution of medicinal products to the public, containing 4 new exceptions to the principle that the distribution to the public is a monopoly of the pharmacy open to the public. So this draft bill should introduce 4 exceptions, and notably the more important, in my opinion, are the one to allow the pharmacist in charge of the pharmacy open to the public to deliver medicinal products under a sealed envelope directly to people at home or at seniors' establishments. And the second one is in favor of the wholesalers that should be allowed to deliver to the public compound health products, and the list of which should be also determined in the ground-legal regulation. So this, in my opinion, is the main reform of the distribution of medicinal products. And lastly, to finish my presentation of the upcoming reforms, I will say a few more words on the importation of medicinal products, because it's a real subject here in Luxembourg. So, importation of medicinal products outside the European Union should be subject to an authorization, except when this importation is for personal use. And also the importation of active substances will be subject to a notification to the Ministry of Health. So that was the main reforms that we should expect for the coming weeks or years in the pharmaceutical law in Luxembourg. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Camille. It was a tough exercise with a last-minute change of this morning. So thank you for adapting like that. Very interesting presentation as well. And I will start a question with Sini regarding what Camille had presented. What will be the opportunity for Luxembourg? You have the European law and local project. Do you see some opportunity for the industry in Luxembourg?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. I think you refer to the EU pharmaceutical strategy and its potential implications. So from that perspective, I believe that it is an opportunity at the same time when certain changes to make the regulatory framework future-proof for Europe. It means that all the countries involved in the European Union will benefit from such acts as well. So I'm sure that Camille, you and your colleagues in legal firms, etc., will be extremely busy in the upcoming years then to anticipate what those changes are. And of course, it's a lengthy legislative process. So what I forgot to mention in my presentation is that from timeline perspective, we expect Commission proposal of the revision of the Medicinal Product Directive and the regulation by end of next year, 2022, which then puts us on the timeline of a few years potentially of negotiations where each member state participates in this on the Commission level, Council level, sorry, of the European Union, and puts the perspective. So I think Luxembourg has a chance to come across as a country that would support innovation and understand the meaning of the strong IP framework that we have in Europe and what is the importance of maintaining it. So I think there are opportunities for countries like Luxembourg to really promote these important aspects.
Thank you. Camille, some more on that? No? So
no, of course, there is a few questions that are asked at the European level, and we will follow that with a great attention here, of course. And the directive, which is a core of pharmaceutical law, we will need to follow that with a great attention, of course.
Camille, in other presentation, you shared as well that some of the local regulation is directly copy-paste from European directive. What is your opinion of that on that?
Yeah, usually, I mean, the decision regarding directive is to stay the most close possible to the directive in order to not take initiatives beyond the scope of the directive, and in order to stay flexible in the implementation of the directive, and to adapt to what could be adopted in our in the country like Belgium and Germany and France. So this is a technique that is applicable in Luxembourg in a lot of sectors, but it's very important, I think, especially in the pharmaceutical industry, where we are very dependent to the position of our neighborhood countries.
Other comment from your side, Sini, on that point of taking the European directive directly to quite the same in Luxembourg?
Yeah, I think from the medicine developers or manufacturers' point of view, that convergence, which could be also translated into harmonization, is super important because particularly the innovative companies are very global. We have global development programs for medicines, and then when you are lucky, every second of the 10,000 molecules that actually reaches the market in the end, you would really like to see a harmonized pathway and as little divergence on a national level as possible. Obviously, I think then to adapt to crisis situations like COVID pandemic has shown, it's important to have certain flexibility for the countries then to manage a public health crisis locally as well. So obviously that needs to be recognized. But from medicine authorization point of view, as much as harmonization in Europe is a big wish.
Before moving to the question of the audience, I don't know if there are questions in the chat. We will. Do you have some, I would say, remark, because it was for both of you the first time you meet, and you were maybe a bit more aware about European or Luxembourgish outlooks. Do you have a direct remark on the two sides?
I don't know. Camille, do you want to start?
No, but I find it very interesting because until today, all the presentations we made were focused on Luxembourg law, and it's very important to have to take to go higher and to go on the European level and to hear about European perspectives from someone which is inside the process. So it was very, very interesting, and I hope our presentation was kind of complementary for the audience. But I was really happy to hear your presentation, Sini.
Yeah, absolutely. Likewise, I think very interesting to see from a national point of view a certain implementation of different rules. So, for instance, the compassionate use program that you highlighted, I mean, origin of it, like you rightly referred to, is in the regulation 2004. So it is actually, to me, quite surprising that that only now, you know, the provisions are actually taking into application. That is how I understood it, and really looked at. And I think compassionate use programs, of course, provide an important pathway for patients who do not have any other treatments available to actually then get it. So I think interesting that it comes so late, but of course an important initiative in many ways.
Yeah, but this was applicable. Sorry, Sonia.
No. Go away.
Because the regulation has a direct effect in Luxembourg, so it was applicable, but without a national clear framework. So that's why they are trying to adopt a clear framework regarding responsibilities, what is the process to get authorization, is there a need for authorization, etc. But so we need. How is it in other member states? Maybe you know if they have specific provisions or not, or
I think we had a look at a few years ago, particularly on these assessment pathways that we see, like an early access to medicines pathways, and what is the national implementation level. And I think in May. Now I don't recall exactly the details, but many countries do have put that program in place. But like you say, there is quite a lot of divergence of roles and responsibilities of the different players that take part in that. So what are the rules indeed? And that's quite hard for pharmaceutical companies sometimes then to know what to do in a certain country when there would be a need for compassionate use for a certain patient. We have a mapping, I can share it if I find it in my archives, of how does it look in different countries, but there is quite some differences indeed.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I will have a look into the chat to see if we have question. Apparently we don't have question into the chat. Do you have direct question? Please unmute yourself and ask a question to Camille or Sini.
Seems like we've been very clear, no questions. That's unusual.
Or they are sleeping, depending on the point of view.
After lunch, that can happen.
Didier, Mimi, I saw that you are there and you used to be the first who dare to ask question. Do we have some question?
I have one question, Sonia. Mimi?
Yes,
my question is, do we have an ID? And maybe you told it, Camille, but then I didn't get it. Do we have an ID why all of a sudden those things were withdrawn from the bill?
Yeah, the Council of State raised a formal opposition against the propositions in the draft bill. And when the Council of State raises a formal opposition, it's not possible to adopt the provision which is subject to the opposition. So the government should have to review the version and to propose a new amended version. And I guess that they are short in time because this law is this draft bill is the law that we are talking about for now regarding the new measures to fight the pandemic. So we cannot wait until a new version of the market access, which is, of course, we need these provisions, but it is less urgent than the sanitary measures against the pandemic.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Camille. Thank you, Mimi.
No questions for me. Thank you.
So if nobody else with question, so I will move slowly to the last point. We had a last point for you. So in Luxembourg, most our lawyers are coming with a BLux or BNILux functions, and we thought with Camille that it will be really important and interesting to have a legal task force or committee. So you are welcome to participate of the kickoff of this task force, legal task force. If you are from the industry, if you are related to legal or regulatory business, please welcome. You are welcome and join us for the kickoff of the task force, the 25th of January. It will be a morning session. We will go through all the mission of this committee and but in short, the mission will be about communicate what are the change, what are the project, and to align all our members, share our position. If there are a project like Camille explained this morning a bit earlier about market access, share our position, and also teach our members about what will be the change and the implication for the industry in Luxembourg. So the organization of this committee, and it's will be every quarter, one meeting. And in case of need, of course, if there are very important things to discuss. And also it will be aligned with the other task force of APL, and it will be led by Camille and someone from the industry. Name of the co-leader is Marie Sanchez. She's director of legal for Max in France, Belgium, Netherlands, Luxembourg, and Nordics. So she will help us to set up this new committee in order to help our member on that. Yes, to answer the question of Marianne, it's mostly for people interested in legal question. It's not about market access. It will be really about all the law will be shared in Luxembourg. So if you are interested, please send an email to me or to Guy or to info@apl.lu. Yeah, that was my last point. If you have questions, feel free to ask as well. Camille, do you want to add something about that? Because you will be the co-leader.
No, but I would be happy to discuss with people interested about to go into the details of what I introduced today, the upcoming reforms and what could be important to reform, and so we will have very interesting discussions, I'm sure.
Thank you very much. So we are a bit early, but I think the topic was quite tough and well prepared and shared. So thank you very much, Camille. Thank you very much, Sini. If the audience has any question, they can ask me on Frank. You have my email address on this slide. I wish you very, very Happy New Year and Merry Christmas as well. And I'm looking forward to meeting you in 2022. Take care and see you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.